if you spoke to conservative or free market people, they would say that what you should do is accept being low status and just live your life that way, but people don't want to do that.
This is again a problem. I mean, this is the problem Christianity solves without too much harm, the way Islam solves with vast harm, and Buddhism solved with somewhat in the middle harm. Is that we don't teach people mindfulness so that they feel they have a way to insulate themselves from this natural habit. I mean, we force ourselves to learn reading and mathematics. We force ourselves to work 8-hour days, but we don't force it. Those things are counterintuitive. And one of the other things, and we teach ourselves to be moral. That's counterintuitive. Then why don't we teach people to have mindfulness? Because that's why religion arose at the time and places it did. It arose when world population and trade got large enough that you were no longer safe and emotionally stable as members of a band or tribe.
So do you mean that it helps people with that anxiety of it helps people with their anxiety enough to the point where they can accept their place in the hierarchy?
Right, as long as it's not false, right? I mean, it has to be true. I mean, that's why Christianity spread into... it has to be true. So this is the problem. Like, people talk to me in Africa and they say, Curt, what can I do? And I'm like, dude, there's nothing you can do, but you got to understand it's not your fault. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. There's so many people at the bottom, you can't form a Pareto hierarchy. So if you can't form Pareto hierarchy, you can't organize production and state and whatever. And if you can't do it high enough compared to other groups, you can't produce anything to compete with. So you're stuck with local production. So that's what you're going to live like.
So is that when you talked about one of the Western strategies being almost like a redistribution of status, where you're saying that we develop this technology that every person is deserving of respect as long as they do their duty within the hierarchy. And so you're actually having proportionality and hierarchy existing at the same time, because people are free to pursue elevation of their status through the hierarchy. But if everyone is given a baseline of respect and dignity for performing their task in the hierarchy, it's kind of both, isn't it? Is that what you mean by what Christianity does? Is everyone a basic level of respect?
I've become an expert on this, and I didn't want to be. You got to understand what European religion came from, right? Your and my ancestors, at least the males, they were conquerors. They took over a group of people, they killed the men, they kept the women, and they bred with them, and now they've got more of themselves, right? Well, they get down into Greece, right? They conquer the Helots, right, and whatever, and they, what do you call it? My wrong name. Anyway, they conquer the locals, they enslave them, and they rule them. So there's a tiered society, right? There's the aristocracy at the top that rules, the army, that's the body politic of, and then there's the ruled, right? So our religion, our status system was built for the capable. Does that make sense? And so what Christianity did is that, when Rome goes around the world, they tried all these things, right? You can have your own gods, whatever. We need loyalty. And if you give us loyalty, we create order, we create prosperity. This is what it is. The problem is, what if you can't compete? What if you're, people don't think about it this way, but, Israel, Palestine, that was like the favela, right, of the Roman Empire. It was the slums, right?
Palestine was.
And so these people these are the poorest, right? They don't have, they have nothing. And so they've been ruled by 1,000 rulers, they don't even remember. The idea of independence doesn't exist. So they invent a tyrannical God. Why? Because that's the only thing they have experience with, and their ancestors have experience with. So Christianity comes along and it says you can have status by extending family love to one another. And this big empire that's making everybody aware of everybody else and letting us see our status, this works. Well, it started out this way, and of course, by the time it gets to Rome, it's largely a woman's religion, right? You came into the house, the woman fed you. It was all about the feast, right? And then once it became powerful enough, men came in and took over and told women they couldn't be it.
And is the purpose of that equalization of status that it bonds people together? It
solved a real problem. We can't work together.
Yeah.
And so you can't build. Rome was trying to build an advanced market economy. You can't do that with people who can't play.
Yeah.
They needed a way to play. They needed a way to invest in that society. They shouldn't have destroyed this society in the first place, but there was a hole. There was a hole in our tradition. So what we got was this nice thing. We got the rule of law and army first before we got state and religion. Then we got state second, and then we got religion third. You think about the order of parts. Whatever order you develop those things determines who you are. I'm again not talking too high level for your audience. I'm sorry if I am. But I mean, it's important to understand that Christianity solved a material problem for the European peoples as conquerors, as warriors. It gave a way for ordinary people to participate in what was growing a market economy with large scale, and they could still feel like they weren't shit of the earth.
Yeah, they could feel included in the project.
They could feel like they had mindfulness. And so that's why it caught on, right?
Yeah.
And same thing in the Arab world. Islam caught on, well, first of all, because they kill you if you didn't, and they tax you 30% if you didn't hear, which is great. But one of the reasons it caught on is you don't have to do anything. You don't have to be smart. All you have to do is obey you don't even have to literate, you don't have to be smart. All you have to do is obey these rules, right? And you can learn those rules pretty easily. Those rules happen to manufacture ignorance and dysgenia and collapse everything around you, but it makes you feel equal. But at the time that religion came out, I mean, we think of the gangster world, right? Or the libertarians think of the Ukrainian world or the Russian world where it's run by nobles, but it's much lower than that. Every tribal chieftain is a scumbag, right? These people are horrible. And the ordinary people, they want an answer to this problem, and Islam gave it to them.
Yeah.
Right? And so anyway, so hopefully I've done too much of a segue there.
That's great. So basically, that's the reciprocity within the limits of proportionality.
It has to be possible. Proportionality has to be possible.
Yeah.
You can't lie about it. The problem is, how do you create that proportionality? You know how we did it in the West? Eugenics. How did we do it in the Far East? Eugenics.
Yeah.
What do? You stop the reproduction at the bottom so that there's gradual reduction of reproduction at the bottom, so that the population distribution is possible to fit into proportionality. And so does that make sense? So
basically,
I feel like I'm making you unhappy.
No. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. I'm just concentrating. Okay. No, all good. Okay. So soft eugenics, that the best possible solution is that you gear incentives and social policies, etc., so that the people who can't compete are just not as likely to be born in the first place. You're not actually oppressing anyone. Yeah, you're not hurting or oppressing anyone directly. You're just not incentivizing those people to outbreed the people who can't compete.
Who is most likely to breed indiscriminately? Right, that's the problem.
Yeah.
And so we see that today, and you get single motherhood, you get the reversion of... Absolutely.
Well, that's good. I mean, to wrap up the point with proprietarianism, people can value whatever the hell they want, and you want to...
No, people do value whatever the hell they want. There is only one way. There is only one value-neutral way of judging whether something is moral or not between people. So reciprocity is objectively moral.
Yeah.
It's not a question.
Yeah.
Right? So the difference is that our needs from one another, right? Our reproductive strategy, our wants and needs from each other vary based on our genetics, right? Which are true.
Yeah.
And so we have to work to take, because everybody thinks, well, the left's attitude is we're all the same. Of course, we're not a herd.
No.
We're very different, and we divide the labor of cognition and perception and everything else. And so we're not like ants where we have 3 or 4 different types. We're humans and we have 1,000 types, right? And so a whole lot of variations on 3 themes. And so we go out and do this. And so how do we make that communication system work? Well, we make that communication cooperation system work by reciprocity. In other words, don't take advantage of anybody else. Well, in a little band, you can control this because somebody will knife you in the night if you don't. But when you get into large organized societies, we get a problem.
And so does that tie into what you said, that the only possible society that will be able to compete is a mixed economy?
Correct.
Because you are giving enough redistribution to keep the people with those intuitions happy, but you're allowing enough hierarchy for those people to be happy. So it's always got to be a balance.
Right, and it's the same. You have to have let's take what the Russians do well. They build militaries, right? What the Germans do well is they build heavy industry. What the British do well is they built trade networks. What Americans do is take over that particular role. Well, the Chinese, on the other hand, they have taken state capitalism back to what Europeans would have done in the past, which is that this...
So can you define exactly state capitalism?
Where the state acts as a venture capitalist, right, to compete in the market, whereas the United States was founded to prohibit the state from doing that and to let the individuals do it. That was part and parcel to our founding. Unfortunately, it only works for a while. At some point, the state has to become a venture capitalist. We in the West, in America, the way we circumvented it is we used the military as our venture capital system.
Right.
In other words, we funded the military. The military did all its strategic investment, and we have the technology revolution, right? And so what China is doing is it's doing that not just in the military. They're doing that advanced research in biology and in commerce. And so, or industry. And so the problem we're having right now is that we don't have a mixed economy that's being where the state is using the huge amount of resources disposal to invest. And what happens is that the natural incentive of free markets is to look for shorter term investments.
Yeah, true.
Except that, so that what you need to do is what we did in the past through the military as a proxy, is you need to have long-term investments, basic research. You had to have industrial investments, batteries by Elon Musk, and he's the actually one. He's doing what Elon Musk does, what the state should be doing. Yeah, right. Yep. Is doing venture capital behind competitive, disruptive technologies.
Yeah.
And he's not, and that's what the Chinese do. They are there because when they do that, they get to make jobs down the line for the middle working and laboring classes. Right. And our government isn't doing that. And so we used up the technology stream created by the military. The Jewish counter-revolution came in after the World Wars, destroyed our military-industrial complex by all sorts of varieties of means, destroyed our civil complex. And what this did is it made it decreasingly possible for us to divert money. So right now we divert about $1 trillion. Remember, our federal budget in the United States is just 3 and something, and we spend 4, right? But $1 trillion more dollars, enough to do all the stuff we can imagine, is thrown out into nonsense land overseas, everywhere else, at the cost of our people. Meanwhile, we're sending jobs and stuff overseas because the government isn't doing the job and the private sector can't. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the same reason we need a state to build, the same reason we need a state to build, we need an army to build a territory so that we can have a state and a government. Yeah. And we need the government to build commons, and we need the private sector to build production. and we need individuals and groups to build reproduction. We need that chain, and we have thrown everything to the libertarian winds on one end, and everything to the neo-Marxist winds on the other, and we're letting the market solve problems that it's not able to solve.
All right, sounds good.
Did I go too far?
With the economics and politics, I'm just not as well read. Okay. So lost me a little bit, but that's fine. I'm sure someone will pick it up. On the idea of the human accounting system being status, do you think that the people, a lot of the people we're seeing agitate in society these days, what they would prefer is a situation like the Seattle Chaz? I think this is probably, do you know what I mean? Like, they would prefer to live in slums because their status is not so unequal. They feel more comfortable. And maybe their strategy of violence, getting together in gangs and asserting physical, social dominance, that would be more acceptable in that sort of situation. So I feel like a lot of the people commenting on these things, like conservatives, they're still too highbrow. I don't think that they understand.
Sort of. What are those people really? Those people are rebelling because they are left behind. Right. The reason those people are left behind is they lack the conscientiousness or self-control to not be left behind.
Yeah.
So that's the answer. And so the question is, what do we do with people who are not, who are like that? And so the regulation, you guys like us and conservatives, we don't need regulation. We're self-regulating. That's what conservative means.
Yes.
Right. Whereas the more you go down into the feminine spectrum and the more you go to the left-wing spectrum, the less self-regulation you have available to you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And so it does, I don't know if they would be happy, right, in a world where their self-regulation wasn't a cost. In other words, you understand? So it's not impossible to fix the world for these people, right? It's always, there's about 3% of the population at any given time. This is just a rule of thumb. At any time, there's 3% of the population that's mentally and emotionally incapable of survival, right? They're just dysfunctional people, and that's why that's about the reason the rate of employment, the maximum rate of unemployment, is around 3 or 4%. Because frankly, you can't employ those people.
Yep. Right. Is that a left-right thing, a male, like a systematic versus empathetic brain thing? Is that IQ thing, conscientiousness? It's probably mostly a developmental issue, which we would throw in the conscientiousness agency bucket. Sure. In other words, these people are unable to self-regulate, and that's what it is. Okay. And so that's what a bad behavior is, right? It's whether you're on the female and psychotic and on the male and violent, side of the spectrum, it doesn't make much difference. We're just breaking down. We're not able to self-regulate. What do you mean, psychotic? What exactly does that mean? In that context? Well, I mean, the two ends of the spectrum are autism, right? There's no you, and psychotic, which is the person. Does that mean like more solipsistic? Solipsistic is in the middle between normal, right? So it goes. You go from balanced, right, to balanced, right, which you're probably an example of balanced, right? To sensitive or empathic, to sensitive, to solipsistic. When you do solipsistic, what you're doing is you can't separate yourself from phenomena. So you see this a lot in females, right? Yeah. They can't separate their experience from the other experience. So that's when you start to break down. Yeah. If you get to psychotic, it's where you're into, your auto association has no bounding in reality anymore. Whereas in the autistic, there's no you. So it's all you and no you.
right?
Yeah. Okay. So it's all your perception, no outside reality. It's
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So
interesting.
This is the Baron Simon. I tell people read Simon Baron Cohen. He's not related to Sasha.
No,
that I know.
He's not. I thought it was his cousin.
But I think, might be. I don't know. But Simon Baron Cohen is the best source of the right now the differences in the structure of the brain that produce sex differences in behavior. Right.
So I think the book that I looked at was called The Essential Difference.
Yes.
The Essential Difference by Simon Baron Cohen.
I start with his work, and I went through every bibliography, and the other side I go with is the computational side. And I work those two, and the overlap. In other words, what we know in neurobiology, what we know in neuropsychology, and what we know in artificial intelligence, that competition between ideas has converged, right? We know what's going on, and it turns out to be pretty simple.
Just as a side note too, I'm sorry, I'm probably coming across a bit flat. I'm concentrating, and I'm also out of practice speaking at the fly. I'm happy.
I just want to make you happy. Okay.
I'm happy.
And so I'm sensitive to making you happy. People don't know that we're friends, right? And so you're important to me. So
same.
I want you to make you happy.
No, I just because looking at my mannerisms and feeling I'm probably not giving you much back, but I'm concentrating.
It's okay. It's okay. Cool. As long as I know you're happy.
Yeah, no, I'm happy. And so male systematic versus female empathetic cognitive biases. Is this analogous to the left and right political spectrum?
Yes.
Yes.
That's why there is a left and right political spectrum.
So we've got
that's all it is.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a spectrum in brain development, and we've got a spectrum in political intuitions.
Right, except that, again, not accept that. And the thing we don't want to get, people aren't bifurcated, right? There are extremes. There's really feminine women who, God, they're wonderful, right? I mean, they are. I mean, it's just wonderful. And there's really masculine guys.
Yeah.
There's also pretty masculine women. Oh, my God, I love them. And there's pretty feminine guys, which wear me out. But, every guy needs a gay tailor, right? You've got to have one, right? I mean, it's just the truth. You need that gay guy, right, in your life, because you're it matters, right? So these whole things. So what happens is our brain development occurs such that there are overlaps, right? And so most of us are a mixture of these two traits. And what you want, of course, is some kind of harmony without failure. And what failure is, and developmental failure in the female, is complete loss of agency, and developmental failure by loss of self-regulatory differences. And the developmental failure in the male mind is autism, which is complete. There is no you. Yeah, and that's what men are. They're less
outward looking, right? Interested in systems, things like externally focused. Yep. Okay.
And the way the brain does this is so obvious, it's hysterical, right? It's just, what am I going to turn on more of in order to get this behavior? Right? You get more hemispheric communication, you're going to get more empathy across the structures. You get more time space, you're going to get less, and it's just hysterical how this works.
Sure. Are these traits mixed so much that it undermines the idea that there are two distinct poles? Or is it like a 80-20 either way sort of thing?
I don't understand the question yet.
Okay,
I'm sure I know the answer. I just don't know the question yet.
Yeah, sure. If people who are actually male are a mixture of male and female cognitive biases, doesn't that undermine the idea that there are fixed positions? Or is it like if you get like 20% feminine-minded men, but you have 80%, so there's enough there to call it a
No, it's definitely like that. I mean, it's a bell curve, right?
Yeah, bell curve. Yeah.
And you can see it.
But the general's still very obvious.
Yeah, I mean, most people are sort of in the middle. Most people are in sort of the middle of intelligence, and and that's just the way it is.